Hey there, good afternoon. Welcome to the second IQ Focus. Today's topic is the venue's venue, getting the venue back. My name is John Langford. I'm coming to you from London, where it is 3:30 in the afternoon. Somewhere in the world, it has gone 5 o'clock, so I hope you have a drink in your hand. If you're somewhere in the world where it's very early morning, you're also welcome to have a drink in your hand. So today we're going to talk about the impact that COVID-19 has had on our industry, particularly the venues industry. And we've got some great panel guests with us today. So I'll just quickly introduce them to you. We've got Lucy Noble. Put up your hand, wave, Lucy. We've got Olivier Toth. There we go, Olivier. Ollie Hoppe. Tom Lynch. And Lotta Nibell. So just quickly, I'm going to ask them all to give a little bit more information about who they are and who they're representing today. Just for clarity, my name is John Langford, and I am from AEG Europe, where I'm the Chief Operating Officer, and I also sit as chair on the European Arenas Association. So I'm going to I'm just looking across my screen. So Lucy, I'm going to jump to you first.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Lucy Noble. I'm the Artistic and Commercial Director at the Royal Albert Hall in London. I'm also the chair of the National Arenas Association, which represents 23 of our arenas throughout the UK and Ireland. So through from the O2 through to Manchester, Liverpool, Aberdeen, Dublin, etc., etc.
Lucy, I've got 3 quick icebreaker questions for you. The first is, what have you missed most about being in lockdown, or what has been the hardest thing for you?
For me, it's been seeing people, I think. So, and that goes for my family and for the team, my team that I work with at Royal Albert Hall, because we're all so close, and I do really miss them.
And on the positive side, what small pleasures have you discovered during this challenging time?
Well, I have enjoyed having extra cuddles with my 3 children, the youngest of which is 2. I've been doing a bit of exercise for the first time in probably 10 years since I became a mother, which has been quite good. And I have to say that I'm enjoying not having a commute to work.
And what is one thing you're looking forward to when things normalize, or one of the things you're going to start doing when you get back to normal?
I think I'm looking forward to seeing people and to seeing live shows and going back to see the lovely Royal Albert Hall.
Amen. Tom, you're next on my side, so a quick introduction from you as well, please.
Hi everyone, so I'm Tom Lynch. I'm Director of Business Development for ASM Global. We're headquartered here in Manchester and have about 25 venues across Europe. My role is mainly new venue projects, whether that be new builds or redevelopments. I look after investments and kind of group-wide commercial projects across ASM Global in Europe.
Same 3 questions for you, Tom. What have you missed most about being in lockdown, or what has been the hardest thing for you?
I'm glad you're doing a recap, because I wouldn't have remembered them. I, like Lucy, just missed seeing people, talking about projects in person rather than down a camera lens. And, you know, as much as I curse the travel, it's great to meet people in new places, and certainly missing a bit of that.
And discovered any small pleasures or new hobbies?
A bit more exercise. I'm enjoying the commute from my bedroom through to my kitchen and back again. That's an improved life experience. And just seeing more of my kids, who by the way are absolutely delighted that I'm on YouTube today. Never mind, I'm a rock star because I'm on YouTube, and that's the next generation.
Donations welcome. And what are you looking forward to when you get out of lockdown?
I'm looking forward to being in a pub with some mates, having a beer. And
what's a pub?
A pub. I can't believe you are mocking my accent. It's a place where we drink in Britain, and we're not doing an awful lot of that at the moment.
Excellent. Olivier.
Hi, so I'm from Luxembourg. I am the CEO of the Rockhal, which is the biggest live entertainment venue in the country. we operate different sizes and capacities ranging from, well, we did actually before COVID-19, we have capacities ranging from 100 up to 6,500, entirely flexible. We are also a member of the European Arena Association, which is why EAA displays behind my name.
Same thing for you, same three questions. What have you missed most about being in lockdown? What's been the hardest for you?
Physical contact. My team, definitely. I mean, we've been all
you have
at
home
home working. Team? Sorry, no,
you
not
physical contact with me. Sorry.
I knew you were. You know, yeah, physical meetings and not just staring at the screen the whole day. Definitely, and live music for sure.
And any small challenges you've discovered? Sorry, small challenges. Small pleasures you've discovered.
Yeah. Yeah, I started to ride a lot more on my bike, which is very nice to just de-stress after a day or just to start the day. And as Tom just said, it's that commute from downstairs to upstairs where I tend to spend my days. So that's a very interesting one. But indeed, it's a huge gain of time in that you know, if you don't commute, I mean, in the proper way.
And what are you looking
for? That's very nice.
And looking forward to anything exciting coming out of lockdown?
Yeah, actually getting back to what we really like to do, you know, feeling that energy again in the venue. I really miss that, and I think it's one of the things I really look forward to. Yeah.
Cool. Next on my screen is Ollie. So welcome, Ollie. A quick introduction from your side.
So I'm managing director of Wizard Promotions, one of the big small promoters in Germany. We work everything from club to stadium capacity, and are pretty busy postponing shows at the moment.
And just for you, Ollie, what have you missed most, or what has been really hard for you about being in lockdown?
Sorry, my screen just...
All right, no worries. I think there's a slight problem with the screen there, but the guys are working on it. In the meantime, I'll just jump across to Lotta quickly. You haven't really had as strict a lockdown, certainly in Sweden, as the rest of us have, but hopefully you can answer these questions too. What has been difficult for you over this time?
Well, as you say, we don't really have a complete lockdown, but we are still practicing social distancing to protect our elderly. So what I miss is my extended family and mom and dad.
And you know, any small pleasures you've discovered over this time, or new hobbies?
Well, apart from commuting, it's also very much more relaxed dress code. So I really enjoy not having to iron and, you know, do stuff like that.
And just last question for me, what is one of the small things that you're looking forward to when things get back to normal?
I'm really looking forward to the vibe and the magic of live concerts and crowds, and having more gin and tonics and dancing with my friends.
Cool. Nothing wrong with gin and tonics. I did have another icebreaker that I was going to throw into the mix. I was on a call yesterday with Lotta, and her dog bounced all over her, which was interesting. And unfortunately, what's happened is not most of our panelists, but a few of our panelists have moved from their homes to their offices today. So I don't know if this is going to work, but I wanted those who are at home to raise your hand so I can see who's at home. Right, if you're at home, stand up so I can see if you've got business at the top and party at the bottom.
I was going to do that then.
I mean, I'm happy to do it. I've got shorts on today.
It's the combination of the two dress codes.
Way to go. Right, let's get on to some more serious things. Firstly, just a welcome to everybody who's tuning on the various channels. We are seeing your live comments coming through, so really appreciate those. Please continue with them. Hopefully that will feed into some great questions as we go through this panel today. what I'm going to try and do is kind of work through a past, present, and future. So just trying to understand that the impact COVID has had on not just the individuals on this call, but their businesses and their countries and their economies and cities. So we'll start there. We'll then try and move through into the response to COVID, both from a government response, but also from what the individual business responses have been. And then we'll try and look a little bit into the future and try and gaze into the crystal ball, which I don't know about you, but my crystal ball is getting foggier and foggier as days go by. So I think it would probably be a good starting point to bounce across to Olivier. Sorry to pick on you first, Olivier, but why don't you just give me an update or give everybody an update on the impact that COVID is having on your city and your country more generally?
Well, we've been moving into lockdown starting March 8th, and it's been very quickly moving towards a situation where, like most neighboring countries from Luxembourg, have seen an event ban concerning our industry. Shops have been closed, restaurants, bars, etc., and people were supposed to stay home. And we've started earlier this month to reopen sector by sector smoothly in order to try and get back to some sort of normal at some point. But we're not yet talking about our industry since then. Now, concerning our company, all our staff, as I said before, have been in home office since actually I'm looking at my screen since the 8th of March, actually, when it hit.
What about you, Ollie? How's things in Germany, and what impact has it had on just daily life in Germany?
Well, I think in Germany we are still one of the quite lucky countries in all of Europe and all of the world. I mean, we don't have as many deaths. We had a strict lockdown early on, so now things seemingly get back to normal every day a little more. So apart from our business, everything's moving into the right direction. I mean, I'm literally going to the gym after this, so things start to look like a normal business again, but for us it's still uncertain, isn't it?
And I believe restaurants and stuff have just recently started to open up, hairdressers, etc. So you're starting to feel that life is slowly getting back to normal?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question of what normal looks like. I mean, let's say different regulations in different states over here, but I don't think it's normal to be in a restaurant and two tables next to you, nobody's allowed to sit. At the hairdresser, everybody, I mean, it's not normal, but still it feels like you can arrange yourself with that. I don't think that I can go to the hairdresser in a mask and keep my distance. I can't go to a concert in a mask and keep my distance.
And with the slow opening up of the economy and things, have you felt, or can you feel the anticipation of people getting back into the economy? I mean, when you go out on the streets or to a restaurant or something, are people excited about being back, or is there very much a cautiousness?
I think it depends on the individual. I mean, there's this Father's Day tradition in Germany where people go out in groups, get drunk, and carry a ton of beer behind them in a little trolley. And coming into the office, I actually saw a lot of people doing this. So if you take a look at the outside, a bunch of people are roaming around, everything's back to normal. I think if you ask a restaurant owner, his perspective would be widely different, because either people are not coming or they can't come up to the numbers they need to be financially sustainable.
And just last question for you on this, Ollie. Is the population respectful of the restrictions that are put in place?
How much time do you have? I don't know how it is anywhere else, but here there's a bunch of idiots like obviously everybody gets to see on the news in the US, demonstrating the measures. And I do agree that not everything the government put in place was spot on. They were under pressure, they had to do things, but going out and we're having demonstrations here where people claim that Bill Gates wants to vaccine all of us. So that's where I kind of draw.
Yeah, understood. Tom, how's things in the UK? I'm sure you could probably attest to people walking around with a wheelbarrow full of beer on the streets as most days in Manchester. But other than that, how's the situation in the UK?
Yeah, certainly when the pubs are shut, that sort of thing is happening. I mean, Manchester is headquarters, and I live just outside the city, fairly rural where I am. So it's easy to kind of forget that you're in a lockdown. I think it's this week has been my first time in the office twice this week, and it's completely dead. The city is empty. I think what's worrying is the people that you do see in the city who are obviously back into some resemblance of normality. There does appear to be a lack of social distancing. I'm driving past them, so it's not a scientific assessment of how far away they are from each other, but it's clearly people just revert to what they were doing before, and I think once they're back in a normal routine, actually they don't really respect social distancing. And from the images that I'm seeing from our beaches yesterday, it was a very rare 80-something degrees Fahrenheit in the UK yesterday, and the beaches were packed, which, it's human nature to want to get to the sea when it's warm in a country that's not very warm usually. But, I think that sort of thing is quite worrying. And I think it's more than just a small group of idiots like Ollie said.
Yeah, bank holiday weekend coming up, so warning there. Lucy, you're in London. Anything significantly different or in addition to what Tom's spoken about in Manchester and up north?
I think that London has been quite good on the whole, actually, but I would say it's really the same as what the other guy's saying. I think people are beginning to relax now and go to meet one other person in the park, which we're allowed to do. But I think there's lots of other people meeting one other person in the park. So before you know it, or on the beach, and before you know it, all these places are actually quite rammed, which is a slight concern, I think.
I guess probably most interestingly is the situation in Sweden. Lotta, could you give everybody who's watching just an overview on how the approach on Sweden is different, firstly, and then secondly, I'm keen to understand, is it working?
Well, I don't know.
Your opinion on that, anyway.
Well, I think the strategy here has been primarily to protect vulnerable groups and to take decisions about restrictions step by step. So we have one restriction since the beginning of March, which is the number of people. It started off being the maximum of 500 people, and by the end of March, that was reduced to 50. Apart from that, we don't really have that many restrictions. Primary school is still running as normal, whereas students from 16 years and up, they are mainly tutored from home and through the computer. Apart from that, it's a lot of responsibility on each and every person instead. So you're supposed to keep social distancing, not travel further than you need to. So everything is open. You see loads of people at garden centers and grocery stores. At restaurants and bars, you're not allowed to have any standing bars, and you have to keep distance to the next table. So of course the restaurant industry is very much affected, just as well as the hotel industry.
No worries. I was actually going to, I guess, bounce into more industry-specific things quickly. Sorry to cut you off there, but that COVID has obviously, and we can tell from this conversation, had a massive impact on our daily lives. But clearly, on our industry, it's been debilitating probably is a word that I've been using. Lucy, I know the NAA has some statistics from the UK in terms of the impact that it's had on our industry and the arena industry. Are you able to share some of those and maybe just give some anecdotes from the National Arenas Association or your own building on the impact that it's had?
I think in terms of the National Arenas Association, we do our annual figures anyway, and we kind of looked at if we are not to be in operation until September from the day we closed, and that's being optimistic. We would normally have taken nearly £240 million worth of ticket sales across the venues in that time. There would have been 13 million people attending shows across the arena. So it's obviously has an impact. That the arenas between us all, we have furloughed 80% of our staff. It's about 5,000 people. But those are just, those stats are just about ticket sales and visitors. But it's the impact on the local economy as well. So whenever someone comes to a venue, they may go to a restaurant nearby or to a bar nearby, and we know that they're already impacted. But those places will continue to be impacted if performances aren't happening in the big venues near them. So there are, I'm sure, even more staggering figures as to how venues being closed impact on the local economy. And that, and then for the Royal Albert Hall, we're a charity, we're independent, we get no funding from anywhere from the government or any other sources. So it's difficult. And in this 3 months closure, we've lost £8.5 million already. We're having to take minimum £5 million loan to keep the business afloat. And it costs £13 million to maintain our building each year. So, I mean, we have furloughed 80% of our staff. We've refunded £4 million worth of tickets. So it is quite an impact. Of course, that no question about it.
Just for those people that don't know, do you want to just quickly touch on the furlough scheme in the UK and exactly what it means for that 80% of furloughed staff?
You're asking that of me, John?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I am. Sorry.
I'm not a job retention scheme expert, but in the UK, the government is supporting sectors that cannot, employ people, offer people work by the job retention scheme, and they have been paying 80% up to, is it a minimum of £2,500 a month, which has actually been a real lifeline, certainly to venues and to the entire music industry. So it means that staff are at home, not working, but still being paid. Some organisations are paying the 80%. Some have decided to top up. So some people are getting 100% of their salaries. So without that, we would have been in a very difficult and different situation.
Yeah. Olivier, your building has been impacted, your business has been impacted. But during this time of shutdown, the Rockhal has been used as a medical facility. Do you want to just touch on exactly what that facility is and how possibly it's also helped out your operations?
Well, that's true. I mean, in mid-March, so about 2 weeks after we were shut down, a medical center was installed in the Rockhal. It's called Centre de Soins Avancés in French, and it's a big-scale testing facility. They have opened 4 of those structures throughout the country, and one of those being at the Rockhal. And imagine it's people who thought and still think they have symptoms, and to get a recommendation by their doctor can drive by. So it's a drive-in location, and then you can also walk in, and then inside the people will take care of you in order to get the proper treatment that you need, get a testing if it turns out that you need it. And that has been ongoing since mid-March, and it still is in place, and we expect it to stay for at least some more weeks. It was announced now yesterday that of the 4 centers, 2 were closing down. It's not yet us. and we'll see how the evolution goes. But so we were able to keep the building open, keep all infrastructures running, and obviously also take care of the building. And we had I think around 50 medical workers in 2 shifts working there every day. So it was open from 8 in the morning until 8 in the evening, and 7 days a week.
Lotta, you've got a range of buildings and facilities in Gothenburg. Are they all closed?
No, they're not. We have 9 venues, 4 indoor arenas and 4 stadiums plus a swim center. So all the training facilities are open, including the swimming center. So we're a bit fortunate because we can keep part of the business running. But we're also using the furlough program from the government.
So you've got a portion of staff that's been furloughed. It's slightly different to the UK furlough scheme. I think there's varied payments for staff.
You can decide on what level you want to furlough people. It's either 40, 60 or 80. So what we're doing at the moment is people are working 40% and they're getting paid 92%, and the government covers 53% of their salary.
Right. Wow. And Ollie, there's a similar scheme in Germany. Am I right? This short time working scheme. Has your business had to call on that?
Yeah, I mean, we had to send a few people into furlough. As I said, we're still quite busy with moving shows, but I think come summer, all of us will be more or less on furlough. And in Germany, it's quite reasonable. So you get 60 or 67% of your net out of the furlough. And they now implemented a law where they will increase it gradually due to COVID-19. So if you're on furlough for 3 months, they will increase it to 77%. If you're on furlough for 9 months, they will increase the net to 80 or 87%, depending if you're married or not. So despite it being horrific to send people into furlough, I mean, everybody is expecting for us to be out of business for quite a long time. So at least that thing is quite different to the UK, where you guys don't know what's going to happen in 6 months.
Yeah. Yes. Certainly in Germany, it seems as if the direction has been quite clear from government. Although, Ollie, I imagine your business being primarily a promoter, the issue is largely cash as well, like many of us, but cash in the box office. So I've heard recently that there's a scheme that's been approved or about to be approved in Germany where a voucher scheme is coming into play. Could you shed more light on that?
Not really. I mean, they passed the law. They passed the law last week. The exact text came this week. Now all the ticketers are about to implement it, which I think is a topic for a whole different panel then again. Because at the moment every ticketer is implementing the measures to what they feel is right. Some are handing over the costings for the fees over to the promoters. It's a bit difficult. I think if I can't cover it all without taking too much of anybody's time.
Got it. So let's just talk a little bit more about government support and stuff. Tom or Lucy, in addition to the furlough schemes in the UK, there are other forms of support that have been made available or venues can take advantage of. Could you touch on those just a little bit and how those have helped your business?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the rates relief, business rates or property taxes, depending on which country you're in. I think that was one of the first moves and the clearest moves that were made by the UK government, and clearly that's going to be one of the most significant overheads in a lot of venue businesses alongside rent and other things. So I think that was a great move, and it was good to have that clarity very quickly. I think that was a lot simpler than the furlough scheme, from what I understood, and left us with less uncertainty quicker, which was helpful. I mean, other than that, John, I think there's still quite a lot of uncertainty, and I think the figures that Lucy touched on are really important. And the economic impact of the shutdown is huge. But I think one of the things that we need to press upon the government in all of our territories is the social impact of losing the live music industry. And actually that's much harder to quantify. Everybody's lives are up and down, aren't they? And it's those peaks and troughs. And I think a lot of people's peaks are going to see their favorite band or football team or sports team. They're the highlights of people's lives, and you take that out, it becomes a bit flat. So I think it's difficult to quantify that, but there's a big societal issue there that is, the kind of heartbeat of our industry, and we need to make that point, as well as seeking the support to keep going.
Lotta, are you getting very clear support from the Swedish government for the industry specifically, or is it more generic support?
It's more generic, and it's the furlough program, some sort of tax deduction as well, and the rental support. So you could get up to 50% rental support as well.
Cool. And Olivier, what about in Luxembourg? What kind of support are you getting?
Well, it's also, we have similar furlough schemes than were mentioned before by the other speakers, of 80%, and you had a very flexible way to operate it, meaning basically you could operate it half-time or variable times with your staff, and then it wouldn't need to be a full month, but it could be only a selection of days, etc. So it was very flexible and mainly trying to support to the maximum possibilities businesses. And then there are different other programs for independent workers over to businesses. So there was a full range, and our government, I think, was very, very proactive and also holding discussions with many of the stakeholders. And also, I said that yesterday we had some new announcements. So yesterday we also had an announcement to restart several sectors in the economy, and one of them that is targeted is the event sector, and also including the cultural sector. So there's some additional schemes that have been introduced, and we'll see how the sector will respond. Now, the good thing is that, and you all know that we're going to be about in the last ones to get out of this. So our government has really listened carefully to these requests that have been addressed to them. And now these new schemes apply for the period of 31st of July over to 31st of December. So it's really going into that next period that wasn't covered so far.
It's a good segue, I guess, Olivier, into just what the European Arenas Association has been doing in terms of lobbying the European government. You sent out a press release yesterday talking about that lobbying position and trying to help out members as much as possible. Do you want to give more information on that for us?
Yes, absolutely. The full document will be accessible for people to have a read, but mainly, we've had that exchange over some time now with people on different levels at the European Commission, and it was very important for us to position the EAA as one of the bodies that can really help in those discussions that we're going to face over the next month. We know about a part of the impact already now, but it's the reboot that's going to be very important. And I saw one of the questions or on the comments coming in that actually are about who will pay for all the additional measures that we will need to put in place in terms of the venues, and we'll be facing probably very different requirements and expectations from our customers. Scenarios will be very different from what we've had until now, starting from the whole artist hospitality part, but over to the audience, obviously. And I'm not even talking about social distancing and how will that impact capacities and different possibilities for shows in venues. So it was really the ambition was to put out a statement that puts a full range of the topics that are major concerns for our industry and for venues and arenas on the table, and open the discussion on those.
I just want to bounce across to Ollie. I just saw a note from Ollie that there's a measure in Germany that covers those additional costs for venues. I'm assuming that was the point. If you could just pick that up.
I don't know about the rest of Germany, but in our state, in Hessen, they implemented a freeway plan of government help, one for festivals, where festivals I think get €5 per ticket that they sold for this year, which is not going to happen. Then the second part was they support artists, and the third part was that they support venues in implementing COVID-19 measures to actually go back to normal business. Mm-hmm. The problem really is it's only €18,000 per entity. You guys probably know much better than I do, but I think for €18,000, you probably will not be able to get disinfectant for a big arena for a week.
Yeah, no, understood. Lucy, the National Arenas Association has been meeting a lot lately, specifically to talk about reopening. And I guess I wanted to start off by just trying to understand what the key asks are of governments from the NAA, or particular concerns that you may have about policy as we start reopening.
I think really we've waited a long time. Well, the clarity didn't come from the government at the start of this. So venues didn't know if we were supposed to be shutting. And then we all were waiting for this May bank holiday news, hoping that this is when they said they would talk about lifting the restrictions. And there was still no clarity around what we're calling mass gatherings. So I think the industry as a whole, and certainly us with the NAA, we are now saying, okay, if you're not going to give us clarity, we will give you clarity. And actually, the government have asked, they are not expert in running live events. So we, certainly as the NAA, we now have a document that we're working on with all the venues to say how we can get back to live. And that is not with social distancing, because as others said, it just doesn't work financially, most importantly, to do that. So, but we do know that we can run our venues in world-class ways in order to facilitate audiences coming in. And I'm sure, as you know, there are several shows across the world that are running at the moment with measures in place pre coming into the venue, whether it's tracing up temperature checks, questionnaires, etc., you know, disinfectant mists or whatever they're calling them. But so we are suggesting that this is how we can operate, this is how we can get back to live. And of course, it's really about us putting our head above the parapet, feeding into DCMS and the government. And our suggestions aren't the be all and end all, because it has to be done with government advice and scientific advice. But we're saying, look, we can do this. And I think rather than being all doom and gloom about the situation and say we're not going to be open for a year, now everyone is being really positive, said, look, we can do this. And there are various working groups, task force, which are feeding now directly into DCMS with the correct expert from our industry on them to help motivate the government to allow us to reopen venues.
Social distancing is a real hot topic in the live industry at the moment, whether it's practical or not for a start, but secondly, the economic impacts of it. Ollie, I'm keen to get your thoughts on this as a promoter, and whether you believe, even in the beginnings of coming back to life, social distancing is a viable solution.
I don't believe it is. I think it might work for some sort of shows or some sort of events. I don't know if you have it in the UK yet, but over here there are drive-in concerts popping up all over the place, and I think that's quite a nice idea for people who are bored at home, who want to go out to see some shows. But at the end of the day, I don't think anybody of us got into this business to do drive-ins. It's a horrible experience for the artists, in my opinion. It has nothing to do with what our passion is about, and I don't think that, at least with what we do, I don't think social distancing will be part of what we're looking to.
So just quickly getting back to reopening and costs and actions and activities from that venues can do. Tom, ASM recently launched a product called Venue Shield. Can you give us a bit of a background about Venue Shield and what the objective is?
Yeah, I mean, it's a global initiative that we poured a lot of time and resource into very early on to, I suppose, try and take a leadership position on finding protocols across hygiene and environmental safety, which allowed us to start to react to the environment that we're in now and are likely to be in for some time, with more onerous expectations and requirements for running events. So we're blessed with having expertise and resource across 5 continents, and they're collaborating with scientific advisors to, I suppose, try and bring together some of the science with our understanding of how venues work, and that's been great so far. I think one of the dividends that we've had out of this, and there haven't been many, have been the amount of collaboration that we've had in the industry, and between different industries. And certainly Venue Shield, from my experience, has been more collaboration across our business than anything else that I've seen before, and the same up and down our supply chain, working with promoters, agents, and people within our production supply chain, to bring forward ideas, to test ideas that hopefully can bring events back safely as quick as possible. So we've had some initial testing grounds for this. So we hosted the first UFC behind closed doors event. I think it was a couple of weeks ago, and they're on a series of events now. And obviously, behind closed doors is no fans, but there's a hell of a lot of work to do in getting the product on the stage or in the cage in this instance. Protecting the artist, protecting production staff, and that Venue Shield protocol has allowed a sports powerhouse like UFC to get back up and running. The next stage is obviously how or if we can introduce fans with social distancing, but more importantly, how we can introduce fans into a safe and clean environment.
Yeah, this is, I guess, a general question for the panel, but I guess I worry as well about consumer demand as we reopen as well. And I'd be keen for anybody to comment on this. Just put up your hand on this. But it's likely that venues and promoters and everybody in the value chain is going to pick up additional costs. It's hard enough, I feel, to be reopening venues with what's likely to be suppressed demand, but who's going to pick up these additional costs? We've got some schemes, small scheme in Germany, but are we going to see numbers come back quickly? They're going to come back slowly. Just keen to get your general thoughts on that from anybody. Just raise your hand so we can see who to bounce to. Lucy.
I think at the Royal Albert Hall we're modelling on the confidence taking a time to come back. So when we're open, we certainly don't think that we'll be selling to full houses, and so it will build up. And also it would depend who the audiences are. So I think there's more confidence in younger audiences, but if it's a more elderly audience, we will struggle more. So perhaps one has to look at programming in terms of helping the venues with their financials. Look at the programming and what type of shows you're programming for the right audiences who will be more confident to come out at that time.
Sorry, Olivier.
Yeah. Oh, there you go, Olivier.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Lucy just said, and what we've seen on some of the shows, because we've been rescheduling almost the full year until next year. Some announced, some not yet. But what we've seen is that people really hold on to their tickets. They don't insist on being reimbursed. So we really believe that people are looking forward to coming back to these shows at some point in time. Now, the main question for us, and we were talking about social distancing right before, is really how are people expecting this to happen? Are they feeling comfortable with it? We see on the streets here in Luxembourg that people well, most people tend to respect it, tend to keep a distance, have their masks on, etc. Then we also see, of course, phenomena like the ones that some have mentioned before, of people just gathering, just like if there was nothing. But we're really wondering how is that going to work? That extreme between, okay, now you're supposed to keep 2 meters between 2 people, and we're packing them at 3 per square meter. So it's really a very different scenario. And most part of our shows are in full standing capacities, and only some will be seated. So not even talking about capacity issues, is really how would people expect to come to a concert?
Sorry, I wanted to bounce quickly across to Ollie again, just to get the promoter's perspective on this. But does the model clearly has to change, I guess. Do you foresee changes in what's become the agent promoter model, the 90-10 high guarantee, big deposit model, to count what's going to happen further down the line with lower consumer demand, lower ticket prices, higher venue and promoter costs? Is there a willingness to right through the value chain to see the model change?
I mean, we're all in the same boat up until we negotiate guarantees, I guess. That's been my experience for the last couple of days. So I think on all shows we've postponed, we try to stick to the deals we have had in place. We were in a lucky position to postpone a lot of shows that were sold well. For new shows, I think we all have to take into consideration that economic climate will go down. People will hold on to their ticket. That's what we're seeing, but they will likely not have as much money to spend on new tickets. And nobody knows where we're going to land on costings, because you don't know how many suppliers will make it, how the suppliers that make it dictate the prices. So I don't think on a big scale we'll move away from guarantees, but I think obviously nobody will be as confident as they have been in the last couple of years.
Ollie, sorry, I want to stick with you as well, just for another question. It's regarding smaller venues. We're mostly representing bigger arena type venues here at the moment, but I've always got massive concern for the smaller grassroots music venues, and in the UK they are really struggling and not able to necessarily access the kind of government support schemes that are available to the bigger businesses. You promote a range of shows. What is your feeling and concern about the smaller venues? And in Germany, are those venues getting similar support to what the bigger businesses can access?
Well, it's a mixed bag of beans. I mean, some of the venues that we regularly deal with are subsidized from the get-go. So they seem to be all right. I mean, for them, it doesn't really make a difference if shows are happening or not. Some others are struggling, and I'm afraid some others won't be there comes the time that we'll be running back to usual unless they get help. And I think that's the problem right now in general with the German help, that you get cultural help and you get economic help, but everything in the live industry kind of seems to fall in the middle between those two.
Yeah.
So, the economics department sees us as culture, and the culture department sees us as business, and same goes for the grassroots venues.
So an article came out yesterday from Goldman Sachs saying that, the research was done a bit earlier in this whole crisis, but the headline was live to return to pre-corona levels by 2022. I'm not holding anybody to any of this, but I'm keen to just know what your calendar planning is looking like at the moment. If it's anything like ours, it's like quicksand, shifting daily. But I'd be keen to know when you're getting a sense that there's an anchor for live events to come back, with the understanding that could shift pretty quickly as well. Lotta, maybe let's start with you.
Yeah, well, we have 7 home teams in different types of sports, ice hockey, soccer and handball. And we are waiting for the national soccer season to start. So that might actually start during the summer, but I doubt that they will be allowed to play in front of spectators. So we are planning for maybe some sport this year, but certainly not very insecure if you're going to have an audience or not. And then when it comes to music and shows, I think it'll be next year. And that calendar is fairly packed as well as for 2022. So we're certainly hoping that that'll take off.
Olivier, you promote and run the venue. What's your sense on return?
I think that we're going to see some content to be available at the end of this year, but probably more in the smaller capacities. As I said before, we operate different capacities. So there's one club can go up to 1,100. Now with 2 meter distancing, capacity goes down to around 90 tickets. So we can move up as we go. But I think a lot will depend on, as was said before, on government advice, on scientific advice that we're going to see. And we're already, we've been working on different scenarios for the smaller capacities to see and to be ready for reopening. Now, on the bigger scale, I would expect, if I was optimistic, and I would say, well, we would hope for some at the end of this year, maybe. But for the rest, I would expect it to return more in 2021. And now in terms of agenda and calendar, yes, this is next year is already really, really packed. And I think most of them are crossing fingers that the shows are going to happen. But we'll see in terms of capacities what will, at the end of the day, be possible to do.
Lucy, any chance of our spectacular end of year Christmas season at the hall?
I'm going to be really optimistic here now and say yes. I do, but I mean our calendar is rammed for next year. So, but I'd really love to think, with measures in place, that we might be able to do things towards the end of this year.
Cool, Ollie. I mean, you're on the sharp end of this. Probably trust your direction more than anybody else's. How are you feeling about the year?
I have to admit, going into this crisis, I made so many wrong calls in terms of how long it'll last, how bad it'll gonna be. I mean, I think nobody in starting February or starting the whole crisis, nobody would have thought shows would actually get cancelled in the summer. And now we all are thinking about a 12-month period or even longer. So I don't want to make any calls, but as I do usually have a very gloomy outlook, I think that we might see some normalcy by next summer.
Yeah, I think a lot of us have taken short-term solutions to what we hoped would be short-term problems, and it hasn't turned out that way. Tom, I wanted to just jump across to you because there was a recent article about redevelopment of Manchester Arena. So, that obviously shows long-term commitment to the industry and to the health of the industry. But I'm particularly interested to understand, since COVID, have you changed the way you've thought about the arena, and particularly the health and safety aspects of the arena?
Yeah, I mean, it's been an incredible project to work on, during a shutdown. Obviously, some logistical challenges to bringing a project like that forward when you're not in the building and people can't get in the building. But of course, it's become a consideration. I mean, I'd argue that we're constantly evolving what a venue does and is as far as customer experience anyway, with technology and contactless and things that fundamentally change how people interact with venues. I think this is another layer to that. I think the challenge is going to be how much of the layers that you're adding for coronavirus checks are things that are sustainable in the long term, or indeed that are required in the long term. But yeah, it's forming part of an otherwise very exciting redevelopment to celebrate our 25th anniversary. I had a piece of literature from one of our architects the other day saying, and I'll read it, we're all safety designers now. Now, if that doesn't fill you with absolute dread, I don't know what does, but hardly rock and roll. But I would argue that our existence is to create a safe environment for people to have fun, and actually, whether that's security or hygiene, it's just another layer to what we always do and how we always design venues.
I'm conscious of the time, and I want to leave a bit of time for me to bounce through some of the questions. But before I do, I just want to ask each of you on the panel, what do you think the most impactful, long-lasting, the biggest long-lasting impact of COVID is going to be on your business? You know, whether it's physical, psychological, social, whatever the case may be, what are you concerned about as the biggest impact, long-term impact? Sorry, Tom, you were talking and you're the first one I can see on my screen. So I'm just going to carry on with you, if you don't mind. Sorry to put you on.
No, that's fine. I'm an optimist too, Olivier. I think that if we're planning for the long term, people are going to get back to doing what they love and what they've missed the most during the lockdown. You know, and that's togetherness, being around friends and family, and enjoying music and sport and everything else like that. So I'd like to think that in the medium to long term, you know, there is no change really to the psychology or to the actual experience of coming to a concert, and you know, I'm fairly confident of that. What I think is the reality is that we're going to be living through periods of coronavirus. This isn't going to be an on-off, and I think the challenge there is uncertainty in planning and forecasting, and ultimately in taking risk. So you know, the agent, promoter, venue chain, and everything goes with that. I think there's a lot more collaboration. It sounds like there's kind of more open-mindedness, but you know, as Ollie said, once it gets back down to making bids and trying to win shows, you know, does all that go out the window? So I think for me, it's more around the structure and the certainty of the industry that we're going to be living with for a long time. That's going to be a big challenge.
Lucy, your thoughts?
I think I'd agree, and I'd say that's the biggest risk is we kind of get over this, and in 3 years' time we have, you know, COVID comes back, or we have another pandemic, and can the industry take that hit again? But on the positive side, I agree that, you know, what has really been shown during this time is the value of the arts and music, and from all the online resources, and people love it, and it brings people together. I think people are going to come out in force, and I'm really, really positive about the future of live entertainment and music, and we just need to find a way to operate within this situation, and if it reoccurs again, and I think that would be our biggest challenge.
Cool. Ollie, your thoughts?
I don't want to be bashing on the drive-ins all of the time, but I think they're a pretty good example of what we do at the core and how fast we can expect people to come back. I mean, you know, it's really like a worst case scenario of seeing the artist you want to see. You're not close to them, you're in your car, he's on the radio, it's hot, you can't go buy a beer, you can't have it with your mates, but people still want to go see the show. And I think that's the one thing that we can take away from this, that what we do at the core of the venue, the promoter, the supplier, whatever it is, it's all very much emotionally important for our customer, and they will bounce back.
I'm looking around. Olivier. I'm sorry, I'm trying to read questions and keep focused here. I'm a guy. I can't do all
well,
of these.
you know, I agree with everything that has been said so far, to be honest. I think on the positive note, I think that people and as Ollie just said, you've seen it in the initiatives like drive-in concerts, that people really want to go out, want to experience a live show. So I'm very positive that people are really keen to get back in touch, feel that energy again that you have when in one room with your band and your favorite artist playing on stage. So I think that's you know, it's gonna come back. Now on the downside, it's and Thomas touched on it. It's the insecurity in planning, because first, as we speak now, we don't know when and in what pace we can ramp up. You know, we know it's going to be good, but we don't know when, and we don't know to what extent. Maybe on our venue, it's, you know, because the Rockhal is like a big black shoebox. I said before, most of our shows are full standing shows. So a main question for us is, in what capacities will we be able to operate, or are those capacities going to be affected by any additional measures that at some point are going to be taken? So that's one insecurity, but it goes back to the planning. And then, I mean, it also shows, or what happens shows, that this can happen anytime, and it can hit really hard, and from now to to tomorrow, and you just be able to watch. So that's one of the of the more scary things.
Cool. And finally, Lotta, just some closing thoughts from your side before I bounce to questions and comments from the audience.
Well, it's always safety first in our industry. So I see the COVID just being part of the risk assessment as a natural part. I'd like to see this as a positive way as well, because it's some sort of forced innovation. We need to rethink old truths, and I can see a lot of development, both in new business models, new partnerships and everything as well. But one thing that's really clear to the society is the value of having events and venues, because not only does it bring a lot of cultural values, but it also, I mean, we're a big part of the local economy, and not to mention the employment, especially for younger people. So I think that would be maybe one positive outcome. Right.
So I'm just quickly going to try to pull some thoughts from the comments that I've seen coming through. Lucy, a couple of questions for you. Firstly, a bunch of really good comments and questions about your backdrop. My good friend Olaf Furness up in Scotland, who's probably drinking too much whiskey this afternoon, wants to know where you got it from.
Well, it is some wallpaper, and I can't remember where I got it from. I've got to be honest with you.
If you don't know Olaf, you can reach out to me, and we'll put you in touch with that. But a question for you, Lucy, on just the DCMS panels and DCMS trying to draw enough information from the industry so that they can feed more into government policy making. And the question is, has that been too much focused on theatres, museums and sport, and perhaps not enough on our side of the industries?
I think to begin with, that probably was the case. And there are people that are very that are very West End focused. Having said that, though, UK live music is a great representation of the music industry, and we are feeding directly into DCMS and lobbying DCMS, and Greg Palmley chairs that, and that definitely has the right people and the expertise. The task forces, definitely, I'm sitting on one of those, someone else from NAA and Royal Albert Hall is sitting on another one, and they definitely have got quite a broad range. So whilst at the beginning it was like that I do think the expertise is there. I mean, there are so many groups feeding directly into DCMS now. It's all very positive.
A question probably for you, Tom. I think you might be able to answer this, but just the impact that the suspension on our activities is having on sponsors and premium income. Got any thoughts on that? It's a great question.
Yeah, it's an incredible challenge at the moment, and I think the only way out of it is by finding great ways to partner with the existing people that you're in relationships with. I think we've been doing some really cool stuff in the Globe in Stockholm, where yes, there's less restrictions on being able to stream events from the venue there, but that's been given. Moving streams around from the 3 or 4 venues in the Stockholm Live portfolio is obviously keeping activity, albeit not people through the door, but activity through streams, big volumes of people seeing the venue, seeing the branding, and that's the kind of commercial side of it. I think the other way is working with brands to do great things for charity, using our audiences and theirs to raise money, to raise awareness, to support, I suppose, the industries that really are badly hit at the moment. We're we're in a fairly disastrous position ourselves, but we're not on the front line. We're not in the NHS, and I think it's incumbent on us and our partners to actually work together to do good in those areas.
A question either for Ollie or Olivier, also came from Olaf. He's definitely drinking way too much whiskey up there. Do you think that there may be an explosion in illegal gatherings and music events during this lockdown period? People gathering together in a forest and dancing around the fire, doing all kinds of things we would never do.
They're already doing it. They're already congregating on beaches, right? I mean, it's one more bank holiday away from a rave in a tunnel or on a beach. I think that sort of thing is inevitable, because I think you can't keep a lid on it for too long. It happens anyway. It happens when we're not in lockdown and there isn't latent demand.
I saw pictures from Frankfurt downtown this morning, and it pretty much looked like a festival site after 3 days, just with broken bottles everywhere. And I don't know if you can call these musical events, but people definitely will gather, especially young people, as they don't really they're not really afraid of the virus.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and I think what we saw over here, that once you had government saying, okay, the virus is still there, so you need still to be careful, but we're opening up. Well, you could see that people are just hearing we're opening up, like do as if nothing was there, and so we wouldn't see pictures like the ones that Ollie just described, but I would expect also people hosting parties, dancing around campfires, etc. Yeah, definitely.
So I think that's probably a good note to finish on. One of the things that I always say has attracted me to this industry is it's social. We've been doing this since Neolithic man started banging a drum, and we were gathering around to listen to the beat back then. So for me, the beat will go on. We need social contact as a species. We need to be in touch with each other. And so I'd like to just thank all the panelists. Really, really appreciate your time today. Thank you, everybody, for the questions. If you do want to reach out to any of us, I'm sure through IQ Magazine, you can do that. We'd be happy to help as much as we can. Thank you for your time, and have a good afternoon, morning, wherever you are.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.